Hey friends, it's Justin. I'm actually recording from Cincinnati, Ohio, and it is so good to be able to be with you. I'm grateful for technology that we can connect from all over the place. Your whole family's probably at home today watching online, and it's just so cool that we can continue to meet together as the church. Through technology, through phones and computers. So today we're actually going to start a new series of teachings, a new series of lessons called Unusual. And I want to start by asking you a question. Has there ever been a time when you didn't feel good enough? Has there ever been a time that you didn't feel good enough, that you didn't feel like you could do enough or be enough? That maybe there was a situation at school where you felt like there were other people that were better than you, or maybe at home you felt like you weren't, you didn't have what it took, or maybe it was on a sports team, or maybe it was in school sometime. We all have these kind of moments where we don't feel like we're good enough. And today we're going to look at a story in 1 Samuel chapter 16 that I hope will be encouraging to you. And I know it's been encouraging to me. So we're going to be looking at a time where God was looking for a new king, and he sent a guy named Samuel out to find a new king. He gave him a secret mission, and that was to find a new king to lead and to rule God's people. Now, the reason that this was really, underground and hush hush, and God didn't tell everyone about this, was because there was already a king, and his name was Saul. And so you can see that this was a little bit awkward because there was already a king, and God was already looking for a new king. Now, this guy Saul, he started off with very pure motivations. He started off with a good heart. He started off with a heart that followed after God. But after a while, what we see is that Saul was more concerned about making himself great and making his name great and everybody knowing who he was, instead of being concerned about everyone knowing who God was. And so here we are. God sends Samuel out to find a new king. And he comes to this man named Jesse. God says, I want you to go talk to Jesse because one of Jesse's sons is going to be the new king. So Jesse was super excited because that was probably a pretty cool moment for this dad. And so Jesse brings his sons in front of Samuel. And he brings the first son. He says, what do you think about this one? And Samuel's like, nope. God just, nope, not that one. The next one, nope. And these guys, they were strong and they were good looking and they were super successful and they were really smart. And so you would look at these guys and you would think, that's probably the person that God was going to choose. And so another son. And Samuel's like, nope. Get to the end. And Jesse says, that's all I've got. Those are all the sons that I have. But God tells Samuel, no, actually, he has another son. And there's another son that's working in the field. And Samuel says, no, you have one other son. Go and tell David to come. And then Jesse's like, you don't want David. David is small. David's just a shepherd. He stinks. Nobody wants David to lead them. There's no way that David is your guy. And I want to show you what it says in 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 7. It says this, but the Lord said to Samuel, don't judge by his appearance or his height. Don't judge by his appearance or his height. The Lord doesn't see things the way you see them. People judge by outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. The Lord looks at the heart. And so David comes, and David was God's man. David ends up being king. And from that point on, God was with David. God was working through David. David reigned for a very long time, and he was the greatest king that Israel ever had. Here's our big idea today. God works through unlikely people. God works through unlikely people. Not the always the strongest, not always the smartest, not always the best looking. But God works through unlikely people. The people that we might say, there's no way that that person's going to make a difference. And God says, watch what I can do. You know, I just wanted to be honest with you for a second. I have had many times in my life where I have felt like the underdog. I felt like the underdog. Do you know what an underdog is? Do you? An underdog is a character in a story or a situation who you never expect to win. And underdogs are all around us. We see them in our favorite movies. We see them in our favorite television shows. We hear about them on sporting teams. It's always the team or the person that has little to no chance of beating the other big, bad team. And sometimes we might even feel like the underdogs. And I know that I have had many times in my life where I have felt like an underdog. You know, I was never really good at school. When I was in school, I didn't like to read. I wasn't good at reading. I was pretty good at math, but I wasn't good at reading, and I wasn't really good at writing. And then I got to the end of high school, and I wasn't a very good student. And God said to me, Justin, you're going to be a pastor. Now, that didn't seem logical at all. That didn't seem like a good idea at all, because I wasn't good at reading. Pastors do a lot of reading. And I wasn't good at really speaking. Pastors do a lot of speaking. And I wasn't very good at writing. And pastors do a lot of writing. And I was thinking, God, you've got the wrong person. You've got the wrong person. I'm just this kid from the middle of nowhere in this little bitty town that has one stoplight. There's no way that I'm going to make a difference. There's no way anyone will ever want to follow me. And God said, Justin, I just want you to follow me. And watch how I can work through unlikely people. I went to college. I still wasn't a good student. I wasn't very good. I didn't like reading, didn't like writing, and you do a lot of that whenever you're in college. And I felt like an underdog. I felt like I didn't have what it took. I felt like I was not the right choice for God. I felt like I wasn't good enough. And God just said, Justin, just keep following me. You know what's amazing is I failed a lot. I failed a lot. I had ministries that I thought were going to be really successful, and I was going to I was going to do great things, and I failed a lot. And God just kept saying, Justin, I want you to just keep following me and watch how I work through unlikely people. You know what's amazing is that Nicole and I, when we moved to Charlotte, God called us to start a church. This ragtag kid from the middle of nowhere, wasn't very good at reading, wasn't very good at writing, wasn't very good at speaking. God said, I want you to start a church. I want you to start a church for college students, and I want you to preach the gospel to them. And I can remember as I preached the gospel and as I followed God and I did what God called me to do, I can remember just being amazed as I watched God work through such an unlikely person. You might feel like an underdog. You might feel like you're not good enough. And I want you to know you're not alone. I'm with you. I'm with you. But God works through unlikely people like you and I. And so here's the two questions I want you to talk about today. One is, when is a time that you didn't feel good enough? When is a time that you didn't feel good enough? Number two, what is God calling you to do? What is God calling you to do right now? What's God calling you to do in the future? What dream has God given you? What do you want to do? But you're like, I think I'm an underdog. That's awesome. God works through underdogs. What is God calling you to do? All right. Hope that's great. I hope you have a great conversation, and I can't wait to see you very, very soon. See you next time.